Yes. Oh, Sanje, Chudang, Soje, Chancho Badu, Taji, Chijen,
Gibe Zakam ki Jolam
Dola,
Kan
Jen Sanje, Drobura,
Jobarsho
Sanje, Chudang, Soje, Chun, Chancho
Ranjo
Badu,
Bada Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi
Chijen,
Gibe Salam ki
Dola,
Jolam
Jen
Ranjo
Sanje,
Sange Joparsho
Sanje, Chudang,
Chorang Soki Chonam La
Chancho
Janjuba
Badu,
Bada
Dani,
Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi
Taji, Chijen, Chonanje, Dola, Benjam.
Jobarsho
Dayan Ta, Omon Gadian Gadian,
Agate Para Gate Para
Para
Sam
Som Gadian,
Gate
Bodi
Para
So, Dayan Ta, Omon Gadian,
Gate Gate
Parangade,
Gate
Para
Para
Som
Sam
Gadian,
Gate
Bodi So,
Bodhisattva
Dayan Ta, Omon
Gate Gate
Parangade,
Gate
Para
Para
Som
Sam
Gadian,
Gate
Bodi So.
Bodhisattva
Ola so Simja Tamjaga, Topjalana Machiba, Sanjay Komar, Moshe Chinia, Tobarcha. And the the Janju Sima Labjana Sushi, the Namto Langwala, Shingo, Simala, Togo, Toala, Tujeshu, Manoa, Jigotu, Kasoba, the Gasachamo, Shuala, Junju, to the Teshitimiji, something check.
And so we set our motivation to do whatever we possibly can to attain the peerless state of enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. To attain that state of enlightenment, I need to perfect all the trainings on the Bodhisattva path. To perfect those trainings, I need to actually study those trainings, and therefore I need to be able to source them from a reliable text. And thus it is at this point in this morning that I have the opportunity to listen to a little from the great Bodhisattva's Way of Life, the great mind training text as composed by the master Shantideva. And like as usual, also we set up our merit field. In fact, our own root guru, but here in the aspect of the greatly skilled and greatly compassionate one, Shakyamuni Buddha. And all around us, we visualize all kind mother sentient beings, beginning with the parents of this life, going back into the parents of our previous life, the previous one to that, and to that, going back to beginningless time and countless rebirths, so that we have the concept of all sentient beings all around us without exception. And that all of these sentient beings that we are visualizing, they want happiness, but they are bereft of that happiness, and they want to avoid suffering, but they are inundated with suffering, seemingly going from one suffering to the next. So when we really visualize all these sentient beings all around us, it's not like that we are without connection, that we are intimately connected through kindness with all these sentient beings who are having acted the role of a parent or otherwise have shown us tremendous kindness from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. And that when we think about that, it becomes something quite extraordinary, this kindness. And so the wish to want to repay this kindness arises. And so having recognized this, then this sense of affectionate love starts to emerge for all sentient beings. And that the very fact of their being sentient beings is qualification enough for the affectionate love that I feel for them. And that so we have this sort of intimacy and this kind of deepening regard for all of the sentient beings all around us. And so when we recall the various sufferings that they have to go through, that spontaneously arises a sense of compassion. And then when we think of the happiness that we want to give them the love that bestows that happiness. And that we take on the special responsibility for this exalted intention to really work to remove their suffering and to place all these sentient beings in happiness.
아니 지가 저도 심지어 탐자선에 심지어 지가 대화 탐자 대화 동안 탐자 대화 제도요 말이야. 제마도 봐. 다 된대 제가 누바도 숨을 도스는 심지어도 투제. 심지어도 남을 심지어도 뭐 봐서 봐. 보다 산재 콘라도 아니 콘게 공부하지 마다면 타면도 아니 이제 터봐 지기 서서 공부하셔.
And so that when we think about it, though, we want to do this for all sentient beings, but in fact, to remove the suffering and to place in happiness just for one sentient being is out of our reach at the moment. But when we want to see from what state I can do this, we look no further than the state of enlightenment itself. There's the Buddha who, for the benefit of sentient beings, generated this mind of enlightenment, and for the benefit of sentient beings, trained on the path, and for the benefit of sentient beings, achieved full and complete enlightenment. And so this is what I have to emulate.
공부하셔. 어떤데? 다들 인바 인자 아니 랑게 동게 난가라 라메 투베 온보 komne. 오다 로다 투베 온보 komne. 아니 지원 쳐봐. 투가 공 이게 숨지다. 아니 투내 이거 소리 왜서 봐도 매바 트네. 감속의 심자 탐자라 보. 심자 탐자라 보네. 토함바 디바데 디바타자 바 장제 타바체. 엔디 개와 개자 되게데. 안 조지 개와 세다 잡아라. 동송도 동치고 제대가 용도 하다미 최배전 나서봐 칸에 피 되네 피와라 되네 초주자와 세다 집에 추가되다 다기르체 다기 시와라 되네 초주자와 세다 집에 투기를 대화종 대외 동바제 대동 니스의 시계수 삼삼자 안데다가 교육군에 초주자와 세다 집에 구송투고 연대 임발라 나봐 또 마샤제 투베 남발라 마주네 라게 둥게 난가 세다 라마 투베 홍보텔라 팀네 자원번 니스메 봐줘 오다 간제 데데게 곰데베 투바 옴보텔라 팀네 아니 랑게 곰시베 투바 옴보테다 안데 이시바 슈는 바니스메 와주수 섭사차 아니 데데게 니스메 와지 교아티 라마 투바 옴보사 투줄레 대화총 대외 동바제 대도 니스메 이시 계속 선서 어데데 공바차
So then when we have considered this desire for us to attain enlightenment, we again bring our attention to the Guru Manindra that we have visualized as the merit field in front. The Guru Manindra is marked by the 3 syllables, Om at the crown, A at the throat, and Hung at the heart center. Light starts to emanate from all the 3 syllables, going out in all directions into all of the 3 realms of existence and purifying all the sentient beings in those realms of all their negativities and obscurations that they have accumulated since beginning this time. The store of virtue from accruing from this is then offered to all of the Buddhas in the 1,000 realms, and as they accept this offering, they experience the bliss which combines with voidness based on that acceptance. And as that acts as a cause, and indeed in representing the qualities of body, speech, and mind of all these Buddhas, the wisdom beings emerge and they dissolve into the central figure in the merit field. And we see them as inseparable from the Guru Manindra.
어디를 거죠? 라야 라마 투베 온부 투가래 투가래 베세트네 온길하나 젠자 아니 대신 샤바나게 들랑고 온고도 시야소와를 때문에 원래 온고 추일라마 제도 투발래 미기와 우케 되겠어 kumba시야.
Once again, light rays emanate from the Guru Manindra as the merit field, this time inviting back the empowering deities from their natural abode. The empowering deities come and bestow the nectar of empowerment, some of which overflows at the crown, producing the figure of Akshobhya.
어디를 kumba시야 어디를 쳐. 어다 되네 임바자 아니 된데 라마 투베 온부텔라 아니 랑다 아니 타이바 랑게 타고 막게 semje 탐제기 다외 때와 이지고 때와 뭔도고 때와 되는 kumba시야.
And so then, when regarding the figure of the Guru Manindra as the merit field, myself and all the sentient beings all around, we have this automatically arising triple faith, faith of pure faith, faith of conviction, and manifest faith.
다 semje 탐제거든 산제 공부 토바치게 돼 뉴원이도 못하다 지금 무슨 아니 어거 겁네 아니 된대게 가서데 녜베 뜸바티 아니 가서데 이게 아치라주 아용소 주발이야 다 같이 다외 김고 냐가와지 란제 생고 유수 내소 삼삼차.
And so then, with this intention to attain the state of enlightenment for all sentient beings to do so as quickly as possible, this aspiration itself produces the seed syllable A, which transforms into the moon disk mandala at our heart center.
보다 야고 쉬고 줘서 된대게 장주가 셈 바치게 가서데 다치게 장주가 셈 된대지 아니 배 랑이 니고 유스네네 보다 뒤 남야 땅금에 삼성 공부샤 뒤 아니 뒤 다다다 주마 순제가 되대 안디 주마 순제데 주마 뭐에 배운 거지 되네 공도 페네다 타르 산제가 투주고 아니 된대지 유튜브 찍이 삼성 공부샤 산제가 공부마도 보대 땅금에 삼성 공부샤.
And so we really rejoice in this establishment of the mind of enlightenment at my own heart center. This is something beautiful. I will never forsake this mind. I will sustain this mind of enlightenment. I will try to do everything I can to increase it more and more until the state of enlightenment itself.
근데 저 제체 나데 다간자제 나데 라완도 중도 주모도 제바체네 아니 나데 소수 류데르데 소수 셈데르데 류셀레 쉐베데네 나지 두게미도 제바체도 다 니기미도 봐. 담 된데 많이 봤다가 랑가라 셈샤네. 많이 봤다가 랑가라 가작가 좀 다가랑 갈 셈샤.
So then this I that wants to attain the state of enlightenment for the benefit of all, where is this I? How does it exist? What is its mode of existence? And though it appears to exist as self-powered, it is in no way that way. And when we look for that sense of self-empowerment or self-powerment in the body and in the mind, we reach a point of not finding. And it is at that point that we just place our focused attention on that mere not finding.
다가르시 근데 당 나데 류다 섬라 딱섬레 쉐바 다치미도 서서 안 딱상 그 류데야 아니 류 생들 하와도 좀도 잡아쳤다 랑기 류 차차 소소다 야와 잡아 있나 류 생들 다 죽고 삼에 그치 근데 뒤사야 류 생들 죽고 삼에 가지 지금 어쩌는데 어다 많이 받다가 셈샤 어디랬지 다가는 시에 어다 다 류라면은 셈대야 라운드 투더 모두 자도 딱사가 셈대야 파 제와주도 셈 생인데 셈 깨진가지라 파 제와주도 셈스 주구조사 매와 저기도 주구조 왔다가 내가 가자 갔으면 내가 셈샤 어디는샤
So when we talk about this merely, we say the I, therefore, is that which is merely imputed. And we normally finish that off by saying it's merely imputed on the basis in dependence upon the body and mind. And so we ought to be careful that when we look into that again, like, for example, looking into what it is imputed upon, the body, for example, that when we, again, do the analytical search, we do not find any aspect of a self-powered self or a truly existent self, even when we look into the different parts of the body. There's nothing that is kind of inherent that we can point the finger at. And so again, we reach that conclusion of it being merely imputed. And so again, to place the mind on that mere absence again is something which is merely imputed. And we may then deal with the body and be satisfied. But we also said that it's merely imputed in dependence on body and mind. So we look into the mind as well, and in more detail to see, is there any sense of that which is, self-powered within the mind, the earlier and later moments of the mind, for example. But when we look into it again, we can't point a finger at anything that might appear as truly existent or fully existent. And so we have to, again, reach the point of that merely being imputed. And again, we place our placement of focused attention on that mere absence, the mere imputation of self on the mind.
nga koran pa tse cho de da ni ba ida lu sen gu de yana lu yana sem de yana de shi ba shi ka ni ka ba tse de ni ge yo ma da nga se ge de lu sen la tak zam le de wa da lu sen la tak zam de tak se lu koran ya lu koran ra wa de tu mo do che ba che do ba du zam ma do ma tak sa ge sem de ya sem koran ge ra sem koran ya ra wa ge tu mo de che ba che ba du zam ma ba che da du zam Vajita mani do, Oda Rawanda Matubata Tachin, Oda Rawanda Matu Taj, Oda Digal Semshan, Dendegim Nebe, Lotte, Kachakasam, Dending Nebe Lotte, and you Hunsi to who also Jubale, Doji Zengabachi, Junity, and the Gasolia. Again, direct them to Tawakabu, Yakawati, that Langtapsk, there's some such.
And so when we look into the self and reach that point of not finding anything that is established, self-established, then we conclude that it is that which is merely imputed in dependence upon the body and mind. But we can then say, okay, well, it's either, established merely imputed in dependence on the body or merely imputed dependence on the mind. And so we look into the basis of imputation, body and mind again, and looking into these to establish whether or not there is a self, inherent in the body or inherent in the mind. And so the idea is, by looking into it in that much more detail within the body, and then again reaching that same conclusion of merely not finding the mere negation of the object of negation. And then looking at doing the same within the mind, not finding anything which is self-established, but reaching that point of the mere negation of the object of negation within the mind. We strengthen the overall premise that the fact is that the self cannot be something which is self-powered or self-established, and that we reach an absolute conclusion in that regard, that it cannot possibly exist in that way. And that this mere negation, then when we reach that conclusion of that mere negation of the object of negation, the impossibility of that possibility. Sorry, then that produces the seed syllable hung, and representing the wisdom, and that transforms into a 5-pronged upright Vajra, which sits on the moon disk mandala at our heart center. And that so again, we have this sense of joy at now establishing the wisdom of emptiness as our very heart center. And that's a strong, determined not to forsake this mind and to keep it increasing more and more and more until we reach that state of enlightenment. That we realize that in both the case of the mind of enlightenment and here the wisdom of emptiness, that this is acting at an imaginary, artificial level, but we are nevertheless determined to make it unartificial and really genuinely establishing these minds. And so it's that increased sense of establishing these concepts within our mind stream and never, ever forsaking them.
가서 다와냐 강와제 한게 요스네다 고메다 아니 동반이 komne 동반이 때 예별로데 아니 도지 가고 쟁가버지 komne 다디 다와 도지 쟁가버지 뒤 남야 당기면서 왔다 뒤 남야 마당세도 다가자 마당세도 돈다데 가르고스나 거두 임바 이네 디 대셰게 스바체나 자주사 돈이 도베 대셰게 스바치 제치 디 아니 잘레 마쇼아체나 거두이네. 다가다 산제 고마 마도 봐도 다디 소소 전화 사나 되나 답디 디 되래 디 잘래 디 되래 마게와 지기 삼사치. 그래 단다디 좀 순제 고마다 좀 많이 배워 주네. 다 산제 그 tun주게 이시 뭐 주도 땅에 랭게 또 삼사 어디도 고마자.
And so this mind of enlightenment is represented by the moon disk mandala, and the wisdom of emptiness as represented by the 5-pronged upright Vajra. When we talk about never forsaking these minds, the meaning of that is that we are actually applying these minds and the thinking behind these minds every moment of our lives, no matter what arises for us. And we're employing our mindfulness and alertness to kind of bring us completely in line with the moment every single time, and to kind of like say, whatever is the situation, whenever it is, that I will motivate myself through this mind of enlightenment and the wisdom realizing emptiness. And I take this as my heart commitment from here on in. That's what never forsaking means. And this is also how we strengthen this mind and change it from something which is artificial into something which is genuine and unartificial.
그래 어디를 kom 아니 라마 투베 온거 투자래 다 도지 생각하고 요바고 아니 이 타고도 어머니 마음문이라 소화서 되게 또 생각하고 되게 요바고 공부시 어디를
So also, as well as ourselves and all sentient beings all around us, this same combination of the moon disk and the upright Vajra is also seen at the heart center of the Guru Manindra in the merit field. It is now surrounded also by the name mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha, Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Soha.
어디를 다 라마 투베 온거 검시면간에 어다 슝디세체 어디를
And so as we kind of continue, we maintain this meditation on the Guru Manindra in that way. 적당 니가 섬주
니가 그때로 숨지 다 말아.
섬주 소칙게가
어쨌든
the Shiba nebe jongala mata niba matakala chawa
시바 네바 중간에 대마타 도바 잡아서 네바 중간에 대마타도 도바 잡아서 대외 방도 주요하나 지달 링배 당와다 대신 니다 녀보나 녀도 대다 도바자 네바 중간에 달라 매네 친해자 달라 치데 미중과 대다 자세 유린 싸웠어.
So we had stopped at the fourth subheading, which was should a fault arise, dealing with it without delay. Verses number 72 and 73. Just as I would swiftly stand up if a snake came into my lap, likewise, if any sleep or laziness occur, I shall quickly turn them back. Each time something unwholesome occurs, I should criticize myself and then contemplate for a long time that I shall never let this happen again.
네바 충의 장아서 네바 첨부 주여서 랑게 도나 마제바이나 아니 네바 충중주 사면도 사메 삼네 안 간자서 네바디 네바 첨부 원래 주태야 되지 야 지단 네바 사와데 패도 그래 다간데서 녀모데야 로다 그 녀모게 녀모라 때네 아니 녀가 남에게 저보 녀송라케 아니 제바 주되다 녀와 주되다 단텔라 소베 다 디게 뭐 보지 용은 되기도 와 네바 찍 사발라 때네 딜라 때네 저보 동네 그 가서 무슨 동네 녀에다 아니 모든의 동네 녀에게 아니 자가서 주마고 주고도 와 어떤데 인바인사 거기 네바 충의장 네바 첨부 중에서 대회나 그래서 중국 여바인사 아니 네바 싸 디바 싸워서 아니 바 가서 님부터 없이 거네 딱답지에 알라 디바데 마요야 탑지지에 딜라 아니 그 뒤에 아니 제바데 세신가 손전에 동나 뒤에지 로베나 디리 디바직 싸워이나 디바 당고 마요야 탑지자 중 자원에 대마도 디바데 싹답 장답지 디 마장와이나 디리 직 싸워데 선인이 잘 나니가 시차를 세니가 개차를 엔들이야 패주해서 용거도와 디패주 아니 다가내시 디바 싸워데 패와 싸마레 아니 디 고배원게 제바 주되다 녀와 주되다 드려 용거도와 아니 다데라 소바데 용거다 다 디가 아니 즉 가서데 당보 싸야의 충중질의 싸매와 이나야 안 딜라 즉 녀부 매바 당안 된데 온게 아니 대치부시고 차주해 준 거되기도 용되기도 오다든데 이제 당분에 개치부지네 오다 뒤집어서 내가 충의자 내가 쳐보 용해 드려 용 것이죠 내가 쳐보 중에 대회나 빵도 주용하는 셔 나라서 대대도 법도갈 주의적 방안을 싸바이나 디 주기 내가 계획을 받을 신고도 때마다도 아니 그 주의도 봐 육답 지기로와 소소다 같이답 지기로와 정배 당와다 대신도 사다 저 랑게 최주배 계계 지다 가서도 양 저기 당시 우체도 양데마 당 자에서도 주주다다라 니 구에 당된데 통계시다 고고 요때 이내야 나 뒤 많이 봐라 저기 계속 줘야 어디를 좀 많이 봐지 디디가도 최주배 통계를 좋아하지
Hello? Hello? Can anybody hear me? Okay, I think the connection has stopped.
I can hear you now.
I can't hear again now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
So it seems everybody can hear me, so I'll continue on from where Genla stopped. So these verses really talk about how it's really about the principle of the hand. It shows great increase. In other words, that even if it's a small fault that's accrued, its resultant ripening will be greater the longer you leave it without purifying. And so, therefore, you can have a major problem on your hands if you don't purify, and to then make sure that you purify. But you will have to either suffer ripening results, which is the rebirth that you will be reborn into. Then you also have the environmental results that you're born into. And then you have the results that are related to the type of action that you've done, and the what is it, the experiential cause, which basically boils down to it will feed your habit. And so therefore you'll have that to deal with if you don't purify as quickly as possible. So here it's pointing out that one should really apply the remedy as much as possible, employ your mindfulness and alertness to make you aware that something has occurred, that it needs immediate purification. It talks about without purification, the fault that's accrued doubles every day, and then doubles first day, quadruples next day, and so on. The effects of it. So you have the effects of it, and then also that habitual sense of that tendency to keep doing, even if it's a small fault, to keep allowing it like a bad habit. And so you have all these thinking about the results that are related to the action, together with employing your mindfulness and alertness, should not only alert us to the fault that's accrued, but inspire us to do something about it immediately.
What did the internet draws one? Internet draws.
That's
can I get something more to it?
The Gurik chess has on Genla, so the
간제 코드 대 가셔죠. 코드 거요. 맞다. 그 양조 시죠. 저게 될라. 다들 먼저 대 인터넷 줘서.
So there was an internet drop.
요. 다 간제 저거 내가 충주지 싸봐 임바 이나야 안디 가서 대 가서 당분에 가다 맞아봐 이나 아니 되게 내가 친구요. 되게 다 남의 그 대보다 제바지도 용화된다 당텔라서 배 숙식부지 용한테 중국요도 용한테 당분 내가 충주는 많이 와도 각도 너무 제 충주는 바깥에 지고 그랬어. 대대 까마도 봐 이네데 그도 까마도네 아니 그 내가 싸싸봐 되는 샥답 지고 그랬어. 샥답 맞아봐 이나 아니 내가 파해주고 그랬어. 파해주고 그랬어. 샥답 지고 그랬어. 가자다 년보다 된데게 심바 지고 그랬어. 뭐 여러 어디는 어디 내가 충 레장 아니 내가 전부 좋아되다 갖고 받지네. 대회나 방도 주용하나 때마다 도와지기로 왔는지 링바 안지다 rinsu tangwa tasa chokuba yuktab chikra deshendu nida nyomlela soba taka nja chotibe kegen wandu nyan sungu dunga na jamba chena nyodo tedala toba cha osha yanjo chik sungyo jata katsa kozo diba kashe jo kozo koyo mare oto cha.
And so yes, so this the importance of not allowing small things to go by. You have a small fault that you should immediately do something about it. In other words, purify it. By reflecting on the various results that might accrue, and also applying the four opponent powers, for example. And it gives the wonderful example of the poisonous snake that suddenly falls into your lap. Like, you're not going to pause or delay. you're immediately standing up and getting rid of that snake as soon as you possibly can. And so it's saying the same thing for us. If we have a sleep overtaking us, or laziness, or any other thing, that we reflect on the sufferings of the lower realms, for example, and then quickly turn that situation around. And so we need to do this as much as possible.
Hello?
Hello, Gela?
No problem. No problem. Deda beja ta dende bezun chene tando chungwa yina ta ngazo le tangbo yinza kasa de ta le tangbo gombe onge yungwa yina chungna nyeba chungwa re shen tani ke tani la menes ta nyeba chungwa de ane chiga donla meba ja masha wacha de nyeba chungwa de ngoto bacha ane sosu la ane chiga kaso de ya chiga kaso ta tongzhong sikura wata kancha sosu wata nga milu lene tante ane milu lemba tira sanje ke temba de chewa tende kapsa nge tende chewa to nga kyobure singa sorcha nga gocho mudo singa sorcha sosu ya kabre ya sosu ya sem ya niwa tene ya toda tango ya tene yungure ya sosu chik tunge dikila samda ya kabre ya chik kabre ya kwa chik sosu ke tabe chik oda sosu ke ta nge tende chewa to nga kyobure nga kyobure kasa nga 심제 탐제거든도 산제 고마 두고 있으게 지게 나랑게 지가 지 너무 게들랭에 갑자기 잠못한 심제 탐제 패도게 근데서 좀 두고 그랬어. 어딘데 그잖아요. 지금 어딘데 삼로들 단에 어딘데 다니래 매네. 진해자 달라 친여바다 다들 전다 근데서 저는 여바도 용사 말에 탑 제보 돈에 오다 가서도 배주도 당시 뭐 거기서 달라 치대 여바 됐다고 미중와 됐다 배워 자고셔 이른도 삼모사 오다 야네 양도 삼로 당전은 안다 뒤주 고바 이내 개요 말에 가선티 개침보 인사 어디서 유른도 삼로들 당고랬어 삼모셔 오셔.
And so yeah, so that when we say, even though you make an effort, still a fault arises, then it says we should really be critical of ourselves, and that we from time to time, of course, it's necessary to inspire ourselves, but from time to time as well, it's necessary to kind of really be critical of our behavior and say, okay, admit to faults, saying this is quite disappointing. I have attained a human rebirth. I have attained a precious human rebirth. I've met with the Buddha Dharma. How am I going to get to enlightenment if I let this go, if I continue with this kind of behavior, even if it's a small fault? And so it's being realistic with yourself from time to time. Yes, inspire yourself from time to time. Be real and be honest about your mistakes. And so this is the way to do it. And then to kind of like really say that you are not really going to make every effort so that even small faults like this are not going to occur again, and to think long and hard about it. That I shall, contemplate for a long time means that you really are thinking long and hard about it, how to avoid it, and so on in the future.
그래서 먼저 들어 연구도 가서 지금 샘 큰용부 샤야지 배나 미기 떠라 당소나 야 소소 야 지금 나게 게드는 내가 열어봐 나게 게드 오다 떠라 당게 열때 매래 법에 열에 삼사절이야 나게도 맞자고도 야 미기 매래 법에 줘나 소소를 지금 견주 지금다 직접도 야 마기바 좋은데 야 최주에 개견제다 녀모게 내가 열어봐 근데 오다가 매래 법에 열때 이내 떠라 당게 열다스 제 코스면 야승 야도야 정도도 와 오다 갑도게 소소게 녀모마게 와다 아니 최주에 개견 연구도나 개견의 세 체도 아니 탑지 담아다 제대로 연구도 와 오다 되는 시제대.
And so here it's really saying to promote a sense of equanimity with regard to yourself, and that here to avoid the extremes of praise and blame. For example, if someone praises you, then there's a danger of arrogance and pride arising. Oh yeah, I'm great. One should remind oneself that sure, this person is praising me, that's beautiful, but there are others who criticize and blame me, who see shortcomings and so on. And then similarly, the other case, if somebody is blaming you or criticizing you, the danger there is that you will kind of sink into unhappiness, and that opens the door to mental affliction, and you don't want that either. So you kind of remind yourself, hang on, there are times when people praise me as well. So you kind of bring your mind back to a level field, a level playing field, like it here is kind of this equanimity. Why? Because what you're trying to do is to create the optimum conditions to, on the one hand, avoid mental affliction, and on the other hand, to promote virtue.
다 간제 개치시데 녀모 마제바지 아니 녀모 깨네 녀바 사와이나 녀바도 뉴도 독답지 그러와 녀바도 뉴도 독답지 디마죠 마도바이나 아니 녀바 충전 저게 녀바 치보소야 어다들 용되기로와 용되기로와 그러와 당부 거주도 녀모 충전 저게 녀모도 독체도 체도 줘야다 다가는 생게 녀모 될라 때는 녀바제 사와이데 녀바 당부도 충전 지바이나 디 아니 저 가서데 야야 패드는 녀바 독침부 수들 남이 그 독침부들은 용에 대한 제바지도 용하지 당대라서 뭐저 독침부 용에 된대 용에 디 용한 당대 무트는 용에 된대 그 차저도 되게 건강을 삼로 당전에 안 대다 모여 채도 아니 디 교육의 차디게 삼로 당네 아니 님이 되게 전에 다도 고답지 고다고 숨고 다 되는
And so in this verse, the most important emphasis is on really stopping the mental affliction, stopping any fault that arises. That it's important that you have able to recognize something incorrect that has occurred as quickly as possible, to stop it and then to purify it, because you are thinking about, if I don't, then there's going to be a great harm. The longer I leave it, the bigger the harm that will come in the future. And we mentioned the ripening result, the environmental result, the result in accordance with the behavioral cause and the experiential cause, etc. So you really are, you've got to think about how powerful and how inconducive it would be to have to go through all those negative results. So because of that, I am going to not be lazy and to deal with this fault as quickly as possible, thinking of it as a fault, recognizing it for what it is, and then setting out to not just to reverse it, but to purify its possible effects.
당가바 리벨레라 배워 자와네 자와레서 지단 내가 대다라 전바 공부니 준세 주디 이니 체바함 리벨레네 되버차서
The fifth of the subheadings was they really making a real effort based on the reasoning, and verses number 74. So, likewise, in all these situations, I shall acquaint myself with mindfulness. With this motivation as a cause, I shall aspire to meet with teachers or accomplish the tasks they assign me.
다 지단 예바 미정와 저다 컨테스트는 예바 연구부도 컨테스트는 예바 연구도 되게 얼마 조단 되게 다 하고 받치는 수고를 지단 예바 좋아 자와다 좀데 예바지 좀 사와이나 디 도베 탑 컨테스트도 도베에서 내가 대다라 녀보대는 점바 공부니도 주로 셔보다 전세가 심제트로 시행의 자라제 네 점바
It looks like the internet has dropped out again. So presuming that everybody else can hear, I'll just go with what Genla has explained so far. So here it's a question of being ready. If whether a fault arises or doesn't arise, whether a fault arises or doesn't arise, then we should use the appropriate measures. And so when a fault arises, to reverse that reality as quickly as possible, and to recall the antidote that must be applied in this particular situation, and to see that as the right thing to do. And so here, being aware of using mindfulness in this way, that your mindfulness is aware, you're kind of living in the moment, you're aware of what your mind is doing. And then with that motivation as a cause, then to that's so.
The internet
Yeah.
internet problem. We are no problem. Internet how to do practice patient showing. I am. Ordinate. That. 딱 그 네바 중다 마중 남의 체시바자 네바 아니 가서도 중나 근데 용부에 메디 하고다 지다 네바 미중아 자와다 아 그게 중아이나 뒤 도배 내가 대다라서 님부 템바 콤바니도 주로셔 아니 삼배사 다 그래서 템바 이래 자네 다 간제 세신게 잘하지 아니 템베 이래 차도 왔잖아 주로셔던 템바 땅을 오자 시 삼배 주디니 디주 계획 신예당 체범 다 마체장 담바다 제수 템베 되는서 리발레다 셴바체네 디돌라 되바 자오자다 데데 셰바체 아니 셰베 되신도 아니 주바치고르스 자오셰바 오자
And so, yes, that's whether the fault arises or doesn't arise, I should know what to do, especially when it arises, to reverse that situation and employ mindfulness in the role of really reminding me what the antidote needs to be applied, etc., etc. And on the basis of that motivation as a cause, I shall aspire to meet with the virtuous teachers. If that's not possible, then also to then make sure that I follow the meaning of their instructions well, and that's my desire to be able to do that.
다 카도 준비해 송아체 그냥 알아서 냠용의 자기네 변 차차베이나 단 디가서 나가서 답미 나들 민매로 되고요 미매 drop 로 되고요 아니 민매 카도도 로 인데 drop 돈라스타마 지다 대 샤고요 갑주대 대 샤고요 때 미인데 이거면 더 가봐서 하고면 더 샤디 어다 대 샤유의 삼사 제원도 아니 미좀 되네 걸 라고 딱다 튀기도 다 도나스타 맞는 지다 대 샤고요 봐 샤고도 통되고 열때 도나 맞도 제일 최대 이거면 남장 다 인데 어다 대 샤이 뒤수대 샤유의 삼사 제원아 안 다들 라고 샤도 딱다라기도 지다 샤디 통고 열때 도나 맞나 제일 라고 딱다라기면도 도나 때는 당에 대 샤유의 삼사 제도 아니 그것도 말 제가 저게 뒤치대 샤유의 사람으로 자기도
Again, as describing instances of mindfulness, that how it's a question of really sort of determining for ourselves that we will be mindful. Give an example of, say, you want to put drops in your eye, and so you've got the vial of drops on the table, and you are needing to put your head back, but you haven't got the drops in your hand yet, but you have beforehand, remind yourself as to where you put that vial down on the table. And so even when you're not looking, you've got your head pulled back into position so that the drops don't fall out. You're able to directly go with your hand to get the vial and then to safely bring it up to the eye to put the drops in. So it's a question, yes, of setting your mind, isn't it, to the task, and that in itself is the kind of like the prelude or the instigation of mindfulness.
这种个当然底下米的也不买人啥，米那 drop 的，就是什么路过多，这路的其他他的当点嘛他都吧，看这看住的底下点嘛他都嘞，人家样看住的你个么多，当不了我他你个嘛的，什么嘛这了你个嘛的什，俺第一说的下月什么这了，路上的，俺大的有我的我这样个多。
And so again, it's pointing to his own experience of, because these eyes are not good, he needs to put drops in the eyes. And that if he's got the vial in his hand and he's not necessarily attentive to where he puts it down, he won't find it. But if he says to himself, I'm putting it right here, that's where I'm putting it. So, recall that. And even when then his head is back and he needs to fumble to find it, his hand directly goes to where he said he put it. And that there's a difference to the kind of like the efficiency with which he can grasp the vial.
Yeah, that's a very short term. Somebody put that way. We careless way. Putting here, first we know, but later forget. Put in finding no get. Yeah. Oh, they show you something. Oh, they show you something. I'm just taking it. That tension Sudan delay is there.
So again, they're saying this is an example of how mindfulness and alertness works. It's kind of modus operandi that you set your mind. You kind of remind yourself to be mindful. But if you don't, it's kind of acting mindlessly, and therefore you don't find that vial, even though you just put it down.
我的他感觉这个我他这个真的这个说的这你把中华真的跟真白跟真的送台湾人呢，真白真的送台了，我他你把真的是用个真白真的送台了，第一绝对嘛样这你把中华咱们讲插腿去，你要插腿去，那插着你把的原因什么着呢？那原因什么嘛这个你把中华人把那米这些讲呢，嘛你把的用个多，你把的原因什么还过去。And
so that this mindfulness is kind of a real guarding, has this really guarding element to it, that your mindfulness will alert you to a fault, and that once you need to have that sort of relationship with your mindfulness to alert you to that, then you immediately go, I better do something about this now, otherwise it's going to lead to a much bigger calamity down the line. And so that's the job. It's the kind of like the guard. And so the third main outline was describing how self-control is necessary to establish what we need to establish. And this has two outlines to it. And the first is through physical and mental pliancy, we are inspired to virtue, or joyfully arise to the task of virtue. And then the second is an example with the meaning assigned to that example. And so the first of these then is the true one's training in mindfulness, body training the mind and the training the mind, and then we can joyfully enter into the task of virtue. Verse number 75 reads, "In order to have strength for everything, I should recall before undertaking any action the advice in the chapter on conscientiousness, and then joyfully rise to the task."
다 진내자 계획에 대체에 너를 나서다 레데 탐제데 준주고 투여봐 다 준주를 때는 주고 여봐데 준주고 누가 개주네 준주고 투여봐 대다 베베체도 바유 된주게 땀남 는 점바치고 그래서 다게 당와 양와데 신도 쪼여 주버자고서 다 간제 준주 생인데 겨와라 쪼여 삼바들와 아니 배 디 주고라 배 쪼여 가시 쪼신도 주도 배 누가 때마다 쏘고 그래서 주버자고 싶어서
And so here it's saying that prior to engaging in any virtuous activity, was to really ensure that we have the full kind of power of our enthusiastic effort, that we should then recall or revisit the instructions on conscientiousness, and that by doing so, that then we can fully enter into that virtue with great joy. And after all, the definition of enthusiastic effort is that which rejoices in virtue.
니와 배든 자와네서 자와래 제다 룽네 조와다 오외 싱베 온조바 대신 저외 온조데 대단한의 주바줄스.
And the second of these was the conjoining of example with meaning. And verse number 76 reads, "Just as the wind blowing back and forth controls the movement of a piece of cotton, so shall I be controlled by joy, and in this way accomplish everything."
뭐들 다 간제 제다 배나 룽게여서 룽네서 좋아던 호와래 싱베로 호와 좋아다 다 싱베 양보데 공제는 룽코라 되반듯이 대주고와 대신도 삼바 개와라 쪼야사다 삼바 개외초라 쪼야게 대 룽아로 온주도 그래서 르당가라는 온주와 자데 카지 쪼신 거는 주도해지 대다고 제나네 개외래 탐자 뉴도 주바 줘라 다 된대게 그래서데 다 당고데 가서데 뭐유게 내주데 신고도와 뭐유게 내주데 신바이나 아니 뭐유게 내주데 신배 돈네 아니 들어 쪼아게 중고와 다른 것도 뭐유게 내주데 마시 바인자 아니 저거 가서 다다데 뭐저 코에 디기라 창네 아니 용한테도 코에 디기데 동네가라시 뭐 뭐유게 내주데 마시 바체 아니 타바다 탐제 캠베 디기데 문야잖아 디기 타치 봐 이마데 뭐마 줘바체 아니 데데 오네 아니 그 몽베 온거 용되기도 다데베 뷰다고지 뭐트 라트 야고지 중앙이나 랑도가 예바 된도바 중앙이바이나 아니 다 간자 룽게 아니 다 싱베 아니 룽코라 되반듯이 캐두고도 와 싱베 양보도 왔다 디네시 용부져서 삼바 개와라 쪼에 룽아 라 온교와도 왔다 디네시 제도 온교와 자데 대다고 제바 이나니 개와 탐제 다 된대지 제도에게는 통계지 좀 두바 이나 개와 탐자 뉴도 저 두바 줄어서 다 개와 탐자 다 가소래 저 가소래 다 가지 쪼신 거는 주도에 용도로 와 거들 뉴도 좀 도와 준 거랬어.
And so this verse is looking at the example of the way the wind blows back and forth is really controls the movement of a piece of cotton or a flag, and saying that if we have this, our motivation is controlled by a delight in virtue, then that should allow that to control our body and speech thereafter. If that is the case, then we will be able to quickly accomplish all virtue. Again, it's saying, but it's really also necessary to have a really strong grip on reality, on actuality of the situation. And that, is a power in itself. And that once we we understand that we have that capacity, then we can start to delight in whatever arises. Now, but reality is we're working against the framework of cyclic existence, where genuine happiness is not available, but it's in the nature of suffering. And that all of this is to inform us as to what sort of reality are, that's the background to which we are operating. In other words, that we need to be self-powered in this regard, not self-powered, but we need to have self-actualized to the point that we know what we're doing and we know why we're doing it, and that and then we can be this piece of cloth that is controlled by the wind of our own virtue, and that no matter what way things are blowing, we are just going to engage in virtue and indeed delight in that virtue.
디보 ngaranzo ali chiwa mitaba khora takta chama do kange tegdo chida chiwa nyeba namchi nyeme chiwe che chama do kanja mi pemba dige ani kaso de 제가 최종의 실업 다 맞아요. 삼중의 실업, 검중의 실업 된지 깨봐 있나다. 개와 라슈고 용대 그러와. 개와 라슈고 다는 건좀 모여야 돼. 강가 가봐도 되거든요. 신고 열어서 신고 열어. 가르친 것은 먼저 미지 깨졌지나 제일 잠 신고 열어. 냠래라 뽕도 거서 뽕도 요 말이야. 다 돼서 근데 랑도 보이게 봐 장마도 봐 인자. 아니 용도금도 와. 용도금도 아니 개와라 주에도 다시 주에도 용금도 와. 这是主要的我们多，这是主图不多，木头的主图我们多，主外呢木头的主图，出种图我们多。这个搞的样子呢，希望你们南京你们就是去嘛都看见每天我的，你把定的你要嘛吧，这差这个多。
So the meditation on death and the impermanence of death is extremely crucial. That in this regard, when we talk about gaining a sense of actuality and gaining a self-one motivation, really, that the death is definite, the time of death is indefinite, and that at the time of death only our virtue will be of any good to us. It's so important to contemplate that again and again and again, that if we are able to do so in conjunction with the wisdom arising from learning, the wisdom arising from contemplation, the wisdom arising from meditation, that virtue should be a natural outcome of that, and it should be able to kind of be really enthusiastic about engaging in virtue. That's very, very important. So that's what we mean by, you have reached the point of absolute definiteness, or you've got an assurance in the teachings that you have gained for yourself, and you have won that for yourself, and that is the most solid basis on which then you can enthusiastically engage in virtue, and that it will kind of counter the difficulties that we have in our kind of watered down motivations, where we find it difficult to initiate virtue, to go on with virtue, to bring virtue to its conclusion, etc., etc. And so this is to kind of really clear the air and to really give us the power that we know we have, but to really convince us that enthusiastic embracing of virtue is the only way to go.
teneza chiwa nyeba toba ya bochi keba ina namchi nyeme ge toba ya bochi chiwa chuma do kaya mebe toba ya bochi keba ina ane ko chiwa nyeba insa chu juba tache chiwa nyeme insa chu dandan de juba tache chiwa ju chu gam do kanja mebe mo sa chiche chu su juba tache wa ju gurwa chiche chu su juba tache wa ju sa de ane ko gar cheba ina chu kale juba na toa ma je jumse yo marwa ta 지금 코에 교육을 저것도 아니 좋아하게 말해. 최고 교육을 저것도 좋아하게 좀 그러고. 다 뭐야 돼 가서 뭐도 가서래. 예반님도 와. 다 들어 차 줘도 와. 예반 많이 받아 차 대봐.
And so it's really gaining conviction. Yeah, that's the word I was thinking of earlier. To gain conviction in what's being presented to us, gain conviction in our course of action. When we talk about the realizations that come from meditation on death, when we meditate on the fact that death is definite, the subsequent realization is described as concluding that therefore I must engage in Dharma practice. The realization that comes from contemplating that the time of death is indefinite is that, oh, I must not delay. I must start my practice right now. And the realization that comes from contemplating that at the time of death only a virtue is going to be of any good to us is that I must now exclusively turn to Dharma. I must, that's it. I must do everything I can to make my life on a complete path of Dharma. And so that's, in a situation like that, if we have really kind of contemplated that way, if we really have got these realizations, then there can be no obstacle to joy or delight arising at all when we engage in virtue. It should be that which feeds our virtue. And that so this is the position that we need to be in, to kind of like say that every time and all times that we are contemplating, we are initiating, we are engaging in virtue, that it brings that certain sense of delight to the mind.
근데 좋아이는 아니 개발을 저 모양와 용다 매긴 좋아. 용다 매긴 좋아.
And likewise, it will again be no kind of like, there's no kind of how do you say, avenue for virtue not to arise, not to come about. Yeah.
그래서 랑신게 되게 똑바야고 지와이는 개발을 저 랑주 용대지로 랑주 용대지. 다 되네 임베인도 안 되대 용하다 다 초망분의 삼로 땅에 아니 개발을 저어디 용답 요가서다 투투에디 배준 제구도.
So that means that we should be naturally attuned to virtue. So therefore, we should do everything we can to try to realize not just the import of these three aspects of death, but this chapter on enthusiastic effort as well.
Yeah, what the and then they made it under Kuroaka to do second that and to do the was live the thought to you, to do second the Gawas to do some Gawala to some. That Gawala to some you want like get Karichito. Gegas dancing a single chickadua. Dancing a single chickadua. Then dancing a single chickadua. That because of the Mitaba to a lot to get the Kikudua. Lakton the Chiwa Mitaba to a lot of Kikuda. Chiwa Mitaba lot the Namadi Kimato by Imaina. And call dancing on gay and Teddy using to take it something and Teddy Chabada, Teddy Digila Chaba the Chua Tene, and got your number to Madu, kicking the Chiangudua. Kicking the Chiangudua, attending in Bata, Chiwa Mitaba to get somebody so. And the Taganishing it to Chiwa Yabadam Senior, the chairman of Kanya Mibaba. Taganishing, and the two more the cake to what they look chicken. That look at there is not, and because of the Jawang and Shingy Lelo, and the Kilu yellow, Daniela Nebe Lelos Lelosum, Lelosum to what more to what. And Ranila Lelu Kagi Yomudo. And the Lelu de Shukshon the Shunta. Tagas Lelu de Tangatsiba Sama Ibacha, Sosola Lelu Kari Yongudo. Lelu Kagi Sosola Shuksha Yongudo. They Shukshun the Krestangudo. Lelu Tangaja or that Tundula. Tundu Yonga give it your trust. Tundu cake to it, Lelure. Lelu Caras or Lelu Sumia, Jawang and Single, Daniel and Yebel, Kilu Lelus, and Gala Lelu de Tuga Madu, Katsulon, Sevachagudua. Tangaja was on my imbachen.
So when we look at the obstacles to us engaging in virtue, one is the grasping at permanence, this idea that well, you know, I have time. And again, it's the meditation on impermanence in the form of death that is the main antidote to this this fault. And so again, we recognize that we have this issue of grasping at permanence, that, you know, we keep thinking, oh, I'm going to live for a long time. And that, again, along with that are the attachments to this life that must be undone and eradicated as well. And so, as well as, meditating on the fact of death being definite, the time of death being indefinite, and that at the time of death only our virtue will be any good to us, we also recognize the faults of the obstacles to developing enthusiastic effort as cited in the text, and they are, of course, the three aspects of laziness. The laziness of being attached to negative actions, the laziness of constant procrastination, and the laziness of defeatism, thinking I can't do it, that's not for me. And so you combine your meditation on death to get you to spur you into action, and then you really also start to deeply contemplate and meditate on these different lazinesses. If laziness is that which is cited as the major obstacle to enthusiastic effort, then I need to get to know my laziness. Which of these is, for example, my biggest one? Am I attached to negative actions, the busyness of life? Am I constantly saying I can't do this, or am I constantly putting things on the long finger? And so you kind of really, really know what you're dealing with when you talk about the obstacles to enthusiastic effort. Why? So that then you can defeat them, you can overcome them.
어디래? 다들 뭐 인상 알아서 단다디 단다디 가서래 답변아 저 가서래 준주고 슝디 장고에데 계제 단위 전부 투규라 안에 된데 윤데도 장가지에 말봐 다 투규라 된데 윤데데 나라 그래서 깨고랬어 두고도 안에 소소가 된데 그 준주고 윤데 용와라 준주고 계획데 안에 가려서나 안에 래로래 안에 래로 민자와 근데 요랬으나 안에 자원예식을 래로 길루베 래로 다니엘 녀베 래로 숨가 안에 다 나라 자원예식을 래로 두에 길루베 녀로 두에 다니엘 녀베 래로 두에 다 두가라 아니 요바이나 안디 숙수도 그랬던 것도 매번 그랬어 속도 다 아니 또 속고도 아니 대삼로 당고에 들어와 삼로 당고에 들어와
And so therefore, in this text, this mind training text called the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, it's not a question of, pointing out to, which of the high practitioners have these qualities and so on, but rather it's a manual of instruction for us to apply to ourselves. And so in this particular case, we are talking about this chapter on enthusiastic effort. And so it's about really asking ourselves all these questions, to what extent do I have enthusiastic effort for virtue? It talks about these three lazinesses as the main obstacles to this enthusiastic effort. Therefore, to what extent am I influenced by either or all of these lazinesses? Am I the person who's too busy with worldly life to engage in virtue? Am I the person who is constantly putting things on the long finger? Am I the person who is just constantly saying, oh, it's too hard, I can't possibly be me, I can't be doing that, this the kind of despondency? And to really get to know yourself and get to know your laziness, and then to then start the process of saying, okay, what am I going to do about it? Which am I going to tackle first, and how am I going to do it? And so this is, it behoves us to reach this point, because if we're serious about engaging in virtue, then we have to be able to overcome the obstacles to that.
어디는 공부시 다 개체부 있어래. 개체부 있어래. 아니 어디 된자 된게로 공자 아니 되잖아. 소소에 된지 용어에 제도 스카 나라로는 공부시도 어디를 제바이나 아니 뭐도 준주고 슝데 저 뭐도 로전 제바데 다 고쳐와 중으로 아니 강투도게 아니 저 가서데 렐로그디 안 숙충다 땅에 아니 타마 두고 뭐도 뭐람 존재 잡네 아니 뉴도 된대제 저 레로도 슈충하다 매와 차와 쇼스 아니 뒤제 밥자한테도 제네 라마 투베 옴보컴 아니 라마 투베 옴보 투가래 뒤제 나가 왜서 제가 규인 밤네 아니 레로 그래서 다 가자 저거도 준주기 계획 아니 레로 인자 레로데 아니 가서대 자원예식이 레로 길루빈로 다니엘 예베 레로 서바 아니 되게 뒤제 밥자한테 마 장답지에 마장답지 아니 소소가 강투도게 레루딜라 아니 저 가서래 강투도게 숙청도 당연히 배준치 아니 봐도 되게 되는 몰람 자자 뒤집 법장자다 뉴도 장답지 아니 산제가 투기를 예배게 되게 준주고 윤대되도 뉴도라줄에 기회치도 아니 지랍 쉬에 왔다데 제바이나 아니 리베리베게 가서대 레로데 숙초도 총도 줘 아니 준주고 누바데 숙체다 체다 제는 다 산제고 투기를 예배 아니 준주된데 게토바 용거로 와
So, how do we go about this? And then, whatever we are meditating on in this text, and indeed all other mind training texts, is for the purpose of applying it in our own lives. And that we need to accept that this is the way we have to do it. So, our training involves reducing, in this particular case, for example, the obstacles to enthusiastic effort, namely the lazinesses, and that to be able to observe that these types of laziness are less prevalent in our day-to-day lives. That we can do this by applying the direct instructions. We can augment this practice by making aspirational prayers to that effect, by employing the descending nectar light meditations coming from the Buddhas, where we receive the purifying nectar light streaming through our system and dealing with the obstacles to enthusiastic efforts, namely the different lazinesses, and purifying those negativities from our system. And then that for each of us to be able to kind of keep a tab on how much that influence is being reduced, how much more effort is available to us to engage in virtue and to continue with the prayer, the aspirational prayers, that we need assistance, we need help as well, to be able to keep our effort up and to kind of reduce any instances of laziness.
다 니바 류 세네 장주 선배 줘발을 주고 준주된 바 샤자와 류도 보고서
So to finish the chapter is the second main outline, which was the name of this chapter. And this is the text known as the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. This is the chapter, the seventh chapter, known as the chapter on enthusiastic effort.
다 되게 게로 뭐저 라마투베 공부 공부는 신체를 연구 공부 시작했죠. 라마투베 공부 공부 시작.
And so then, as we were reflecting on, we set up the merit field with the Guru Manindra. Again, I bring your attention to the Guru Manindra in the merit field.
근데 라마투베 공부 두가라 다와도지 쟁아바체 디 타고도 덤베청아 다이다 오머니 마무니에서 요번에 란다란게 타고도 심제 탐제 게 투결에 다와도지 쟁아바체 덤베청아 오머니 마무니에서 와서 요데바지 공부지시.
And we also recall that the combination of moon disc mandala with the upright five-pronged Vajra, which is surrounded by the name mantra, Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Soha, is to be seen at the heart center of the Guru Manindra, our own heart center, and indeed the heart centers of all the sentient beings all around us. And again, again, reflect and bring to mind the Guru Manindra in the merit field.
Then Lama to be on the Tsanga to Sat. Diet or money, money, so diet or money, Sinda.
Then recite the mantra sometimes. Tayata Muni Muni Mahamuni Soha. Tayata Muni
Diet
Muni
or money,
Mahamuni
money,
Soha.
so
Tayata Muni Muni Mahamuni Soha. Tayata
diet
Muni
or
Muni
money,
Mahamuni Soha. Tayata Muni Muni Mahamuni Soha. Tayata
diet
Muni
or
Muni Mahamuni Soha.
money,
Muni Muni Mahamuni Soha.
diet or
Tayata Muni Muni
money,
Mahamuni Soha. Tayata Muni Muni Mahamuni
diet or
Soha.
diet or
Tayata Muni Mahamuni Soha.
diet or
Muni Muni Mahamuni Soha.
diet or money, so diet or money,
Muni Sota Muni Muni Mahamuni
diet or
Soha.
money,
Muni
so
Soha. Tayata Muni Muni Mahamuni Soha. Tayata Muni Muni
diet
Mahamuni
or money, so
Soha.
what Lama to be on the Chivola, Chiva, the mine, the Koran mixture, and those what is called.
And then so we see on the basis of this, then the syllable appears at the crown of the Guru Manindra, and we place our focus on that.
The lewis, a part of the Randa Ranga toward the Simja Tamjela, you watch the Lama Timson, such around the part of the
And so then the begins to send out countless rays of light, along with countless ohms, and they dissolve into the at the crown of myself and all of the sentient beings all around.
Around the bottom of the pen, we said around the bottom of water, around Simja Tamjaka, Chivo de la Patent. They timber dinner, and Randa Simja Tamjaka, a Tom de what the Kabatoya, Luke on a Swatchaba, and Majamalamba, Missawa Jobata, Lasobe, Neba, the Datanjaba, but Josh Dao Johnson, that's it, Tom was a debate about Josh Daba Johnson, some such.
And then with the light and the ohms streaming through from the at the heart, at the crown of the Guru Manindra, and dissolving into the ohms at the crowns of myself and all other sentient beings, they really start to affect a very strong purification of all negativities and obscurations since beginningless time, but particularly centering on physical negativities such as killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. And we feel that these are completely purified.
Because of my Johnson Tan, my doing Chisu, some such. And then my doing to the my doing a rang doing the land, but Sakian, Sarjima water, Chita Katan, the Decanal, but none my tuition, some such a thing, Mommy was some such.
And then below us, the ground opens up, and we perceive the wide open jaws of the Lord of Death, who is actually consuming all of this negativity, which is streaming out of and seemingly being fight completely.
And then, Timber Atila, Timber Alamini, command, Lama Tibet, Timber Ala Aranda Pato, Mevachona, Randa Ranga Tago, the Simja Tamje, and then Timber Atila Timne. And Toma Mevans, the Tibachita Kabato, and it got a Nagona Sabe, Takajaji, Tama Tixo, Nachela Subet, never can just join a Tsengama Ting, Thomas never. Debate, but none obi kota pabi matane. Tata gini da shi chen rangi obi kota pabi kota matane. Ane dungi te sakye te tena maa chine. Ane riba kui wadil chida shinje khana ba. Ba chunung chida shinje ngumba meba sao samsa che.
And then from the at the throat of the Guru Manindra, again, light rays start to emanate, and countless and powerful light rays emanate together with the replicas of the syllable and they dissolve in through the at the throats of myself and all other sentient beings all around me. And on dissolving in through the throats of myself and beings, light is of the power of purifying in this time, but particularly centering on the lying, harsh speech, defensive speech, and idle gossip that we have accumulated.
Teneya, kasade randa senjo tanje ge ane lama tuwe ombe tuga hongla bingne ko tuga hongla mingno komde lama tuwe ombe tuga hongle randa pado meba hong randa pado meba randa ranga tako senjo tanje ge tuga hongde la pati. Hello hello hello
Hello.
ya tuga hongde la timne ane toma meba tikwa kyaba tuya ane chige 다간제제 이권에 사베 낙셈 뇌셈 록달라 소바다 제대체 토마메오서 디버도 나니니 마 ombikwata pabusu bukasono tuyane tatagi nesin chene ane rangi tuyane sakye dina maa riba kuyi wata chida shinche kata di nalapa tuyane chida shinche ngomba meba pa saso samsa che.
So I'll just go back a little bit. I wasn't sure. I didn't realize that we had lost connection again. So the R syllable at the throat, again, the light rays emanate from there through into the R syllable at our throats and the throats of all other sentient beings, again, purifying all negativities and obscurations since beginning this time, just specifically centering on the verbal negativities of lying and harsh speech and divisive speech and idle gossip, and again, purifying that so that it again descends through the lower parts of our body into the jaws of the Lord of Death, who consumes readily and without satisfaction. And now from the hung syllable at the heart center of the Guru Manindra, again, light rays emanate together with hung syllables, dissolving into the hung at the heart center of myself and all other sentient beings all around me, and purifying all mental negativities such as covetousness, malicious intent, and wrong view. And upon purification, this exits my body-mind complex through the lower parts into the jaws of the Lord of Death, who consumes without sense of satisfaction. And then the light begins to emanate simultaneously from the and the and the hung at the marked at the body of the Guru Manindra, and again it dissolves into our three syllables at the same time, again purifying again all of the imprints related to negativities of body, speech, and mind.
Lama tuwe ombe tuka yube tawa toje tsenga bada tobe tsenga tila ming komande ane tawa toje tsenga tobe tsenga pa tobe ba chune randa randa tango da simja tangje tawa toje tsenga tobe tsenga tila pa timne ane jamni ji jangju senda toni tobe shira kebala badu juje tikpa tiga ma jangchen su ba nani ni tuyan chi su sansa wadine koma cha. Hello? 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 Hello?
Hello, Genna. Just very mixed. So I think Genna is talking about hello. Yes.
Hello. Yeah.
Yes, Shila.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can anybody hear me?
Yeah. Lama tube ombe tugalu yube. Dawa doje tsenga bata.
Hello. So now we visualize So now we visualize at the heart center of the Guru Manindra, this combination of the moon mandala disc, the upright Vajra, and the surrounding mantra, And that this again sends out countless versions of this, which again come to the version that we have at our heart center and dissolves into that version that we have at our heart center. And at this point, we feel that this offers us a tremendous kind of blessing, not only to purify any obstacles to us being able to generate the mind of enlightenment and the wisdom realizing emptiness, but really is facilitating our realization of those two mindsets also.
라바도 다 다른 저 가서도 그 준주의流的 준주의 객 아니 가서래 다 간자 레로 아니 가서도 레로데 가서래 다 간자 로 자왕년식으로 길길로 다니 예배 레로서 레로 되게 되게 나니니마 된주 삼사체 나니니마
And
된주
that we also consider that the obstacles to this chapter of enthusiastic effort, namely laziness, being the laziness of being attached to negative actions, the laziness of defeatism and the laziness of procrastination, that all the laziness and imprints of those lazinesses are completely purified from our system also.
뭐 나니니마 된주 삼사 나니니 되네 다 간자 로 나니니 된 전전 아니 단다데 가서 단다데 치다 신제 칼라바 좀 치다 신제 칼라 좀 치다 신제 카마 좀 당에 매버 쳤어 어디는 공부자 아니 도지 겨름자 마사마틱 대자
And so that they all of these obstacles kind of leave our system down into the ground, into the jaws of the Lord of Death, who now closes over those jaws, which are sealed by a double dorje, and then the ground seals over on top of that as well.
what 아니 때는 라마 투병을 두가 다다 두가네 아니 왜세 세부슈 쳐보 주는 밤에 아니 라마 투병을 투기를 요한나시 전에 다 간제 지금 가서대 가서대 연대되게데 알아서 sem제 탐색의 길라바 뇨니도 게 바자 켜바자 중소서 어떤 거 봐자
And so then from the heart center of the Guru Manindra, again, light rays, golden light rays emanate. And these are bestowing on us kind of the imprints of the body, qualities of body, speech, and mind of the Guru Manindra, that again, they may be facilitated to develop and reach completion as quickly as possible.
뭐지 안데네다 야조 년종제 공부시 감성고리로 가와 개와이네 아니 동엘레 마대버려서 근데 개와제 년종데 아니 이게 밤제죠 밤용서 줘발래 안 배마다 맞게버지 랑게 지월 내소 삼사체
So now we focus on renunciation again, to that there is no genuine happiness to be found in cyclic existence, and we must gain definite emergence. And that is symbolized by the syllable BAM, which transforms into the lotus mandala seat on our crown.
신앙의 출근데 제 유대한 주가 두상 요만해서 코다 주가 봐셔 대 이게 홍요소 줘발래 아니 님의 정원 약간 주소 삼사체
That the all inner and outer phenomena lack any objective existence, even at the atomical level. They are merely imputed, and this symbolized by the syllable Hong, which transforms into the sun mandala seat on our crown.
심지어 탐제기도 산제 고만 요원이도 모든 탐도 요원도 토바지기 서베 로콤 아니 된대게 예베 dum바디 아니 이게 아직 아연도 교회 다위진 원냐 강화죠 되게 님의 진고가 되는 내소 삼사자
Then this desire to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, the mind of enlightenment itself is symbolized by the syllable A, which transforms into the moon disk mandala at our heart, at our crown.
그게 나가 라마 투병보다 젠자랑이 지고를 반대자와 라마를 보자 다게 지고면 그래서 고소도 정보를 짜줬어 라마 투병보 젠자 담에 가서 배 니베 가서 쇼 수배 가서 땐도 쇼는 산제 고마마도 어째 송소 어다 야고 시우 주서 라마 투병보 산제 고마마도 어째 송소 가고 아니 야라도 보면 되지 봐
And then the invocation verse to invite the Guru Manindra to our pre-prepared seat on the crown. O glorious and precious root Guru, come take your lotus and moon seat placed here on my crown. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. At the end of the first recitation, the figure moves from the merit field. At the end of the second, arrives at the pre-prepared seat. And at the end of the third, we have this certainty that the Guru Manindra will remain until we attain enlightenment. At this point, we rejoice and make the offerings of the seven limbs and the mandala offering.
지나가 저희 근데 저번 유전 좀 tun사요 뭐 코다 줘 보고 뭐시 된된 예배 로데 아니 님의 좀 약간 줘서 섬잡자 하트 섬자 탐제가 된도 산제 고만 요한도 뭐든 토마도 토바지 섬사 되는 공부시 된된 예배 두바데 아니 다외 좀 약간 와서다 그 님의 좀 거는 내 소서 반대 잡아 라면 뭐 다가 니가 앞에서 그저 구수도 정보를 찾아서 저는 근데 다가 라마 두고 뭐왜 그러지 진짜 아니 랑게 지원은 마 전에 마주는 랑게 요소다 담을 것을 배 니가 가서 쇼스메 때도 저 산재 공부마도 저 다 야고 시고 좀 가고 안 랑게 닝게 배마 담아 잡아대 남주 닝 내다는 디도 도지고 정하바 체가제 가제 디 탕가 타고도 뜸배 청아 다에다 오모노모노 마음으로서 오모노모노 마음으로서 오모 르바송 거데 되네 지도 자매가 서 오모 알아봐서 나 디디들 르바송 거데 되네 이 가서다 땡땡가 오모 예다와도 마샤만에 서 르바송 거데 되네 지고 봐시
Then we once again reflect on renunciation, and from that, then the syllable BAM produces the mandala seat at our heart center. And then we think about how all inner and outer phenomena lack any objective existence and are merely imputed by thought. And this contemplation is symbolized by the syllable Hong, which transforms into the sun mandala seat at our heart center. But how this contemplation facilitates the possibility of attaining enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, the mind of enlightenment itself, which is symbolized coming from the A syllable into a moon mandala seat at our heart center. Again, when we invoke the Guru Manindra to come and to partake of our pre-prepared seat, O glorious and precious root Guru, come take a lotus and moon seat placed here on my heart. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. At the end of the first recitation, the Guru Manindra moves into the central channel. At the end of the second, arrives at my pre-prepared seat at the heart. And at the end of the third, and again we have that beautiful certainty that the Guru Manindra will remain until we attain the state of enlightenment. Now, the petals of the lotus are fold over and are sealed at their tips by a white five-pronged vajra. And then this package is now surrounded by three mantras: the name mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha in a clockwise direction, the mantra of Manjushri in an anti-clockwise direction, and the mantra of dependent origination in a clockwise direction.
라마 투베 온 닝게 우스 요바데 라마 투베 온 구송토레 웨세 파도 메버초나 란다 웨세 초나 랑게 지보네 간데 봐 류게 차단잘 여기 참네 아니 토마메반 디바데 투베 케바도야 다간자 제베카나 마또 라제 카나마도 벤제바 근데 상와이면에 바짱치다 다간데시도 소다가 돈바다가 전주점에 라바다 상가게 다지데 거라서 하다 말아 먹고 정말로 조성바 정말로 꾸조술을 내벨에 담배 쳬도 포백균을 구하다 뭐 심절 내벨에 도나 토리다 답에 계속 그 예도 그 소치자 타제 장시 다수 조수자 안 다가는 신게 쳬주발에 개침보다 랑게 류다 셈데 대상데 개침보 인상 류다 셈라 아니 지강에 그저 뭐 시와제 주식 커먼지고 잘롱 틀리 교연 탐제 바 장시 다네 다 바도도 뉴도 산제 고마 토발라 타면은 나셔데 교연 지주에서 타면 나시 교연 탐제 장네 강남 산제 다과란 잡아서 차도 야고 수중수 서서 공부자
So then the light rays begin to emanate from the Guru Manindra inside at our heart center, permeating through every possible cell and atom of our bodies, affecting a very powerful purification of all negativities and obscurations that we have accumulated since beginningless time. Centering on the 10 non-virtues of killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, of lying, harsh speech, divisive speech, and idle gossip, of covetousness, malicious intent, and wrong view, of all negativities accumulated in this life, and the one previous to this, and the one previous to that, going back to countless lifetimes since beginningless time. Also, all naturally occurring negativities that are purified, all those actions prescribed by the Buddha, all of the infractions and downfalls associated with pratimoksha, bodhisattva, and tantric vows, all the disrespect that we have shown from to our parents right up to our gurus, all of the times that we have harmed a member of the Sangha or caused a split in the Sangha or abandoning the Dharma, all of the impediments to our both physical and mental health, which can severely impede our practice of the Dharma, they are all purified, completely purified as well. All imbalances within the elements of the body, within the channels, winds, and drops are also completely purified. And indeed, the main obstacle to our attaining enlightenment quickly, namely ordinary appearance, is dropped, and we adopt a pure appearance.
rangi shindu chawe lungdi nyelenga cha lama shaja sima kudel henji chiganchi sozolu da lama shaja sima kula juzu samsa cha rangi shindu chawe simda nyelenga cha lama shaja sima kudel henji chiganchi rangi sida lama shaja sima tula juzu rangi lunga sa lama shaja sima kuzon tongo yeme juzu samsa di dewa de tongpa jen de donyi suma ishi jasu samsa rangi nesa ga ne de ne gu gyuen tenze jen lama shaja sima tabe shindu juzu rangi lama shaja sima kuzon tongo yeme juwa nāla rāshī mē bāchī kūpa shē. Tē tūkā lā lāma shācā sīngā pādō mē bā chōne, simchā tāṃ chā lā lāma shācā sīngā, chā sāngwā rī rī shūpa lā tēne, tētā tāñcā chā lāma shācā sīngā kūsū tū tōngwā yīmē kyū sō sīngā, tētā kā nēsā nē tēgā nē gu gyōn tāñcā tēne, lāma shācā sīngā tāwē shī tū kyū sō sō sō. Wadā wā tēne kūpa shē, tā simchā tāṃcā sāñcā kā sālā kū kī, sīngā tē nīmā tērī kū tū sō tā yāgwā shī wū sō sō kā kō.
So then through the combination of my own more subtle wind acting as the substantial cause, together with the body of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own body is transformed into the enlightened body of a Buddha. And through the combination of my own more subtle mind acting as the substantial cause and the mind of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own mind is transformed into the enlightened mind of a Buddha. I now see my own body, speech, and mind as inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of a Buddha. This induces a sense of bliss, which combines with voidness, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness. The place that I find myself in is also purified of all fault and becomes a Buddha realm. And then seeing myself as a fully enlightened being and also as lacking any inherent existence, I send out countless rays of light, equal number to all of the sentient beings in all the realms of existence. And upon dissolving into them, they spontaneously arise as fully enlightened beings. And the places that they are in are also purified of their respective faults and transformed into Buddha realms. Again, I rejoice at seeing this. Today is the day I fulfill the purpose of myself and others and have led all sentient beings to that state of enlightenment. I rejoice in that.
나 심지어 담자 라마샤야 생게 살아코바 대치도 수지 교와 가주와 두군 소 잡아가 유대의 주바생의 두상요만 코다 잡아 공부시 엔디 대화체 대외 동바 대돈 예수미 시켜서 삼산체.
And then seeing how the three elements of leading all sentient beings to the state of enlightenment, the virtue which has facilitated this, and myself as the agent of that virtue, They all lack any objective existence and are merely imputed by thought. This again induces a sense of bliss, which combines with voidness, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness.
아니 라산제가 토고 대토와라 잠니지 잔주가 생긴 잠내 지구도 다 된대지 잠니지 잔주가 생긴 잠내 아니 배 뿌다 보지 용하라 다 단단한 고추고도 근데 수고도 서나 다 랑게 소나 사나 토나 대나 도나다 내단 근데 잡아야 디기 중나 동네 중나 근데 중앙 인바 있네야 잔주가 쓰다 돈이 때문에 실업 계획을 튕겨라 줘도 봐지 소속에다 제투바지 제가 수수가 담자샤네 데이터 투바지 강투도 그 잡아다 시신거 손에 데이터 투바 제투야라다 배준 제바이나 아니 림보마도 봐 투투바지 용사를 되는 시직이 삼사체
And so, of course, we're acting at the level of imagination and aspiration here. Of course, to attain these states is not so easy. But nevertheless, in our dedication, I want to be very sincere in saying that I will do my best to be able to quickly bring this about and make it manifest. Of course, I know that to do that, I must attain a state of enlightenment itself. And in order to attain that state of enlightenment, I need to generate the mind of enlightenment and the wisdom realizing emptiness. And then in the actuality of that is that I must inform every motivation I have with that mind of enlightenment and the wisdom realizing emptiness, regardless of what happens. Whether it's happiness or suffering arising, I can transform the moment into an opportunity for virtue, for dharma, regardless of what happens, what situation I am in. So indeed, every moment, really, to be able to apply the wisdom of emptiness together with the mind of enlightenment. And of course, in order to be aware of that, I need to have the assistance of mindfulness and alertness to be able to keep my mind on the job. And so I also dedicate that I will have that level of awareness to always apply this motivation in everything I do. In your Buddha,
Jan Sen Joren Boche Ma Ba Nama Jorje Kya Nyam Ba Me Ba Ya Konya Gondo Pe Wara Sho Donye Kaware Hage Panamage Juraj Gyaba Nyava Melpaya Konya Gondo Pelwarasho Kanria Rave Kove Shingama So Pendan Malu Jumen Cheria Sewa Tenzin Jazo Ye Chabe Sidia Ba Tendo Meijin Miao Miao Zhe Lo
Drai Pen
Shalai
Shala
Soai Dem
Sorodem
Meoi Meoi Zeoi Deoi Deoi Jeoi Deoi Meoi Jebe Oi Moi Jabe Oi Je Jeoi Oi Deoi Bangama Lo Zai Doi Jalai So Wai Dem Meoi Meoi Meoi
Ang Chen Ken Pei
Oh,
Tur Ke Tsang Ka Pam Lo Sang Drak Pe Shala So Wade. You are, O Lakshvara, a great treasure of compassion, not aimed at true existence, and Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom, as well as Vajrapani, destroyer of hordes of demons without exception, Tsongkhapa, crown jewel of the sages of the land of snows, Losang Drakpa, at your feet I make requests.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.